What's up, Hardstyler? It's Hector, the Kettlebell coach. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 3-step discipline contingency plan. So if you're just now tuning in, for the last few episodes, we've been talking about how to develop discipline. Again, I know, not a sexy topic, but it's an important thing that I want to call attention to, because there's no such thing as motivation. There's no such thing as I don't have time. All of these are just excuses for lack of discipline. It is what it is. And it's okay, because once we get clear on what the problem is, we can take action towards solving the problem. Now, what inspired this is, I see a lot of talk about, you got to be disciplined, you got to build discipline, you got to do things whether you like it or not. And there's a lot of truth to that. But what I don't see people showing people how to develop discipline. No one showed me how to develop discipline. This is something I think, guys, we kind of figure out on our own, but how long does that take? How many ups and downs? So I wanted to create, a few lessons on here's how I've done it. Here's how we teach our students to do it. And hopefully, you take this stuff, put it into action, and you start developing discipline for yourself. So that way, what do we want this to do? How do we want discipline to serve us? Well, we want it to help us to take action. We want it to help us to stay consistent towards the goals that we've set for ourselves, whether it's our strength training goal, a fat loss goal, spending more time with our family, like whatever that is, learning a new skill, studying something. This is what discipline does, is it keeps us accountable to ourselves so we can become a dependable person, right? So if you're new to the channel, my name's Hector Gutierrez Jr. For over 12 and a half years, I ran one of only 2 kettlebell-only training facilities here in Texas, where we helped men and women over 40 build stronger, leaner, and more capable bodies in about 90 minutes a week, ultimately giving them more time to do more of what they enjoy and less time trying to be the best at exercise. So if that sounds like you, welcome to the channel. In the description, if you need help building a better body in less time, I've got a free gift for you. Be sure to download your free 4-week strength program. I'll put that in the description below. And also, you'll see timestamps if you want to bounce around in today's video. All right, so let's dive into this. So to help our students build discipline and stay consistent with their goals, we teach them how to live by a code. This is something we call the Hardstyle Code. And if you look at all of civilization, a lot of companies, a lot of civilizations have a code that they live by. If we look at it from a religious perspective, the church has a creed, right? We've got an apostles' creed. And so when you have a creed to live by, you know what it is that you believe in. And you can get clear on what your purpose is. And all of your actions will be aligned to that purpose, to that creed. And so the code that we teach them is awareness, adaptation, aligned action. And I got these from the order of salvation. So if you look at awareness is an examination of conscience. It's where you confess. It's where you admit that you're a sinner and that you need a savior. Adaptation is about repentance. It's about doing penance, and it's about amending your life, so making adjustments. And then the final piece of the code, aligned action. That is aligned, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. It is aligned to atonement. It's where we develop virtue. It's where we begin the soul building process. So just like our training system is aligned to the proper of time, I did a video on this and how we order our training to the proper of time that is taught also in the church calendar. This is important to know, because when life gets in the way, we have a system that we can lean on. And we're not relying on our own faculties. We've got a structure, we've got a system that we can follow. So when life gets in the way, we teach them the code. We teach them how to detach, how to take a step back and allow the code to do its thing. And it's really a 3-step, easy-to-follow process. And it in and of itself is an upstream strength strategy. I've done a video on this on built-in safety mechanisms, and I talk about what an upstream strength strategy is. So step number 1, when it comes to developing a contingency plan for when life doesn't go your way, is awareness. And that is detaching for a brief moment. Take a moment to get clear on why you're not being consistent. And we do this by getting clear on what stories are coming up for us. Because it's the stories and the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about circumstance that leads to our results. Get clear, and we want to get clear on the source of that resistance. This is important to know because when we can, this is a difficult thing for us to do, but when we can get clear that everything is our fault, where the blame goes, the power flows. So if you can say, you know what, it's my fault that I haven't, done X, Y, and Z, guess what? It is now within your realm of what you can control, which means you can take ownership of it and solve the problem. But the first thing we got to do is we got to gain awareness of the stories and the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. So let's get clear on the source of resistance. So anytime that we are presented with a trigger, anytime we're presented with a circumstance, a situation, what happens is that based on that experience, we begin to tell ourselves a story of why I can't stay consistent with my fitness, my nutrition, my family, like whatever it is. And then based on that story, we begin to cement a false belief about ourselves. And then that false belief, that worldview that you have developed, that becomes and forms into internal resistance, keeping you from taking action. Now, there are many forms of resistance, but I'm only going to share 5 key forms of resistance with you in the first part of the code. Okay, so the first form of resistance is research and planning. This is a big one. This is where guys get lost in, quote, research. I'm just going to do the more research. I'm going to research the thing, right? And what happens is we become men of consumption instead of becoming men of production, which is men of action. And this is a big one for men because what's the result? Well, paralysis by analysis. We get so good on gathering information that we don't take action on it. So and here's what this looks like. You'll know that you are falling into this form of resistance. Just when you're about to take action on the new plan, the program, the diet, like whatever that is, just when you're getting ready to take action on it, all of a sudden our ego has this thirst for new information. We think we need to know everything before we can get started, before I can make an adjustment to move forward. So I need to do more research. So ask yourself this question. Like when you feel this need coming up, ask yourself this question. Do I know enough to take the next step? Our ego has us believe research and planning is essential. And while it is important to plan things out, it shouldn't become a form of resistance to avoid doing the hard work that's in front of you. And what can happen is research and planning can become a pleasure in and of itself, which is a form of effeminacy. Remember, effeminacy is not feminine. Effeminacy is avoiding hard work out of a disordered attachment to pleasure. And so research and planning can become a disordered attachment to pleasure in and of itself becomes effeminate actions. So research and planning is a key form of resistance. So if you find yourself needing to get more research done, you need to ask yourself, dang, why am I resisting the work that's in front of me? The second form of resistance is procrastination. Now, when I talk about procrastination, it's not about like binge watching Netflix or taking some needed time off, but rather it's when you begin to tell yourself, I need to do X before I can do Y. Ask yourself, of everything on my to-do list, which is going to move my life forward today? Because our ego is smart and it will give us the runaround. So what needs to be delegated or not done at all? It can also look like this. I need to get new workout clothes. I need to rearrange my garage before I get into, doing my workout. I need to, rearrange my office before I can do this task. Like that's procrastination. I need to do X before I can do Y. So it's not about taking time off. It's not about, I'm just going to sit here and like veg out on Netflix for an hour or so. That's not procrastination. Another form of resistance is lack of resources or excuses, right? If you hear yourself say, well, I can't because, or in order to get my workout in, I need to do X before I exercise, right? We just talked about that in procrastination. So what happens is men are really good at creating obstacles for themselves that are insurmountable, which ultimately is faulty thinking. There's always a small step that you can take to move yourself forward. Start where you are and take baby steps wherever it is that you can. So lack of resources and excuses, which is aligned also to procrastination. Here's a big one. Thinking you're special. This is another form of resistance. This is a hard truth. Here's the truth, man. Your situation is not unique. We always think, all of us, me, everyone, we always think my situation is different. Yeah, but you don't understand. My situation is different. No, somebody else is suffering from the same exact thing that you're likely going through. We begin to think, well, I get to skip the rules of what everyone else has to do. When in reality, we must lift the weights. Lift the weights is something I say about doing hard things, right? You got to do the hard work. So you can't bypass rules. You can't skip steps because you think that you're above the law, essentially. There's a difference in questioning the rules and ultimately sidestepping reality. Like, man, why do I got to do this? Why is this important? Versus, well, I'm just not going to do it at all. Your situation is not unique. My situation is not unique. And then the main form of resistance here that I want to call out is terror or fear. And you might be thinking, man, I'm not afraid of anything. Well, in reality, we are. Oftentimes, we're afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of failing. All of us are. None of us are immune to this. But this fear ultimately comes out when your ego has pulled all the tricks and nothing is working. It's tried procrastination. It's tried thinking you're special. It's tried research and planning. And like you felt those forms of resistance, you took action anyway. And so when you start to bump up against, what did Gray Hendricks call that? The upper limit, which is that place of that new experience or this like new territory. If none of those forms of resistance worked, fear kicks in. And this is where your ego pulls out the big guns. You all of a sudden become anxious, emotional, disorders. But here's the good news about fear. Fear is an indication of imminent transformation. So when you start, like when that fear stuff starts kicking in, that's when you know you're on the brink of something. But this is the last ditch effort for your ego to try to stop you. And people underestimate how much fear will affect them. And again, don't misinterpret fear as, oh, something is wrong. Fear, from a philosophical perspective, fear is acknowledging that which has power over you. Don't give your circumstances meaning, right? This goes back to getting clear on what stories that we're telling ourselves. And what happens when we begin to give our stories meaning, right? We allow that self-doubt and we give and we create that belief about ourselves. What happens is when you approach that, fear barrier, which is right when you're about to have a transformation, when you approach that and then you back down, here's what happens. The next time you come up against it, you've given it more power. That fear becomes bigger. That interior resistance becomes it becomes bigger. And ultimately creates more anxiety. So ultimately, just recognize fear for what it is. It's acknowledging that which has power over you. And just know that the more fear that you have, like, man, I'm afraid of taking action on this, or for whatever reason, doubt and fear popping up, just know that you're closer to a breakthrough. So if you're in the middle of transforming your life, if you're in the middle of building that, stronger, leaner, more capable body, and then you start just having these, fears of something, that is your ego pulling out the big guns to keep you from that breakthrough that's imminent. So pay attention to the next time you're not taking action towards your definiteness of purpose. Keep these forms of resistance handy. Refer to which form of resistance that you're in when you're feeling, quote, end quote, stuck. You need to get more information, what have you. Be aware of those things. This is why key number 1 of the code, become aware. Take notice of your patterns. Which of these are ultimately coming up for you? Get to a point to where you can acknowledge resistance is present and make adjustments so you can move forward and take action anyway. And that leads us to step number 2, adaptation. So what adjustments need to be made? Now that I'm aware of these forms of resistance, now I'm aware of these stories that I'm telling myself, how can I make adjustments? What false beliefs need to be overcome? In a good way of getting started on these negative stories and false beliefs about ourselves is, what's the opposite of that belief? If I believe, I suck, I'm a loser, I always mess things up right in the middle of training or diet, whatever that is, what would be the opposite of that? What new belief needs to be built? Because ultimately, my friend, it's all about knocking down current false beliefs and building new false beliefs. So here's how we do it. Here's how we teach our students. Number one, we help them get clear on what their values are. Write out 5 to 6 core values. This will take some time. Sit down with pen and paper, get the thoughts out of your head, make them concrete, write them down. What are 5 to 6 core beliefs or core values that you hold? This is a critical piece because show me any person's results in their life and I will show you what that person values. If you say, well, I value health and fitness, but yet you're not taking any actions toward it. If you say I value family or whatever it is that you say you value, but yet you're not taking action towards those things, you don't value the thing that you think that you do. The core value that governs all values is integrity, right? And integrity is alignment of words and actions. So take a moment, get clear on what are the things that you say that you value. That's step number one to overcoming these false beliefs. Now that you're clear on the values, let's set a goal. Cast a vision of where you want to be. So your values set your vision of where you want to be. That vision allows you to see what is possible for you. And ultimately, when we lack a vision, we perish. I believe it was in the book of Proverbs. He says, without a vision, we die. Without a vision, we perish. If you cannot see where you want to be, where you want to go, how are you going to get there? The next step would be to get clear on your definiteness of purpose. Napoleon Hill talks about this in his book, Think and Grow Rich. Your definiteness of purpose. What's the goal? Where do you want to be? What do you want? Then from there, make definite plans and adjust your current plan as needed. Give yourself a deadline. I covered this in 3 ways to get more from your kettlebell practice. I talked about in more in detail of definiteness of purpose, definiteness of plans, and then persistence ultimately. Like that's a little 3-step framework that Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich. And then the last part of adaptation is now that we've gotten clear on your values, we've established a vision of where you want to be, we've gotten clear on your definite purpose, your plans, and you've given yourself a deadline. From there, write it all down into a daily statement. Write down what you're 100% committed to. This isn't like these fancy affirmations, oh, I am a this, I am a that. No, because ultimately what you're doing is you're lying to yourself and you don't believe it. This is why affirmations don't work. Affirmations don't work is I am this, I am that, I am this. There's some power to that, but it ultimately falls apart because you likely don't believe it. Instead, write down what you're 100% committed to taking action on. So example, I am taking action on this specific aligned action every single day, right? So if the goal is I just need to start working out, so I am 100% committed to working out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with my kettlebells, 30 minutes each session. That is very specific. I'm 100% committed to doing that. Then the next thing you would say is, as a result of this aligned action, it is current date. You can give yourself a date 3 months out. It is current date, and I have just attained what I want. Right? I've just attained that definiteness, that definite purpose. And then from there, you would say something like, as a result of this specific desire, I am currently experiencing this in my life. And as a result of this life experience, I get to, fill in the blank, take the next step towards my life, my career, my family. And all of this was made possible because I took X specific aligned action, whether I was ready or not. And then from there, read this thing out loud twice daily and literally brainwash yourself to do it. This is how you create a new experience. Remember what I said in the first part of the code is get clear on the source of your resistance, right? And it all starts with that experience. That experience leads to a story. That story leads to a false belief about yourself. And then that false belief about yourself leads to internal resistance. And so what I'm showing you right now is a framework that we take our students through to create a new belief about self. We call this the better man cycle. We're leaving the toxic cycle and we're entering into the better man cycle. And once we now created this new belief about ourselves, this new belief leads to results ultimately that we're pursuing. And that's step number 3, aligned action. Aligned action leads to atonement. Action ultimately leads to virtue. And discipline is a virtue. Discipline is, another word for discipline is temperance. Temperance is one of the natural virtues. They can also be called the cardinal virtues or the moral virtues. These are virtues that we can develop. Prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice. So align your actions to your definiteness of purpose. So this is why it's so important to get clear on what your values are, because your values set your vision of what's possible based on, this is what I value, this is where I want to go. Now, okay, here's the thing that I desire, your purpose. Now, once you've done that, you can start to put together a strategy, an aligned action, because once you're clear on that purpose, you're clear on your values and your vision, all actions moving forward will be aligned to that purpose. I covered this in how to structure a 4 to 6 day work week. And here's the thing, start simple. Don't confuse simple with easy. Choose a discipline that you know you can stick with, because simplicity equals repeatability, and repeatability equals consistency, and consistency equals results, right? So simplicity leads to repeatability, repeatability leads to consistency, and that leads to results. So ask yourself, what is an action that I can take today? Start accumulating wins. The antithesis is a losing streak. When you lose a day, you get really good at losing. And when you get good at losing, what happens? You break trust with yourself. And when you break trust with yourself, you're not going to stay consistent. So how do you start to win? Simple. Do something different. I believe it was Einstein that said, you cannot solve the problem with the same thinking which caused the problem in the first place. So literally just do the opposite of what you've been doing. That's it. Because you cannot solve your problem with the same thinking which has caused that problem in the first place. If this video helped you out, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the like button, turn on notifications for more kettlebell content. And I'll see you on the next one, man. I appreciate you watching. See you on the next one. Peace.